Hey, what's up, guys? Today's episode is going to cover glazing as it relates to decorative concrete. That term is widely used around in different trades, such as pottery and window trims and etc. But we're going to be kind of talking about the basis of glazing and what it is. It's just nothing more than translucent washes overlapping one another that create very complex color variations. So I got some live demonstrations along with some examples to help illustrate what exactly is a glaze and how is it going to make your work looking better immediately. So let's just jump right in. Okay, guys, before we jump right in, if you guys can please just pause real quick, hit a like and subscribe. I appreciate it. Helps this channel keep moving forward and keep releasing knowledge. All right, so what I did is I spent a little bit of time on the internet gathering up some images and some information. This first graphic it looks like an excerpt out of a book, but what it's cool is it explains what a glaze is. A glaze is a wash that is applied on a top of another wash. This general purpose of a glaze is to darken an area. By adding several glazes of the same color, the original hue will stay the same, but eventually become darker in value. That's critical. So I guess what they're saying is that especially on a textured surface, we're going to be talking about like stone textured surfaces, and even some countertops that have some subtle variation in texture, okay, or permeability at that point. And what it is that a first color goes down, okay, and that color can be looked at as part of a glaze too, that first color, because it's not going on opaquely, meaning that like if you're doing a countertop or rock in some cases, that gray, that level tone of gray is pivotal in your overall tonal value, what you end up with at the end, okay? So like darker gray, that's why darker gray finishes don't really topically color well, because they're not bright enough. You got to brighten them up. Hence, that's why a lot of guys love white Portland cement. It actually shows the color through, whether it's integral or topical. Okay, so back to the glazes. Right here, this can be useful in toning down a color that is too bright while still keeping it luminous. Okay, so in our rock game, if the rock appears too bright, a lot of times, not that the rock is not colored correctly or matching the set of colorants that make up that geology, but it appears too sterile. That's where antique glazing comes in, different washes for different effects, iron oxide leaching out of rocks, sandstone washes, things of that nature. And if you look at this graphic right here, it kind of sums it up in one illustration. And if you look at the blue swoosh going through the core of those colors, you know, magenta, yellow, cyan, green, it looks like they got a sienna of some sort and an ochre on the end. But look what that blue wash, you know, kind of did. In this case, you can see kind of the green coming through. It's more like a purple, right? The blue on the blue is just a darker intensity. But it did alter those tones, creating a complex tone or tonal hue at that point that would be very hard to, or if not impossible, to render out with one stroke of the brush. Okay, now let's jump to the next illustration. Okay, for this illustration, you can see that's blue and yellow. Blue and yellow, like we covered in the first video, make green, secondary color, right? Look at the swatch. You know, even some of the variations in that blue, look how it's picking that up, okay? The variations in that blue undercoat, it's not just a static blue. There's light versions of that and some more intense versions of that blue is kind of put on in a sponge, it looks like, leaving little dotlets and variations of color saturation levels in different areas. That's picking that up. Look how complex that looks with one swoosh of the brush. And we have an advantage, us rock artists have advantage because we have textured surfaces. So inherently, they're going to look modeled because of the way it absorbs into the surface and as well as the lighting. Very critical. All right, next illustration. Okay, here's a rock. Now we're getting into some of the geology, more practical examples of how we use this technique in our creations. All right, so we got a pretty much a base tone, kind of a sand, taupe looking color, but look at all the mild variations in that. Very subtle. You wouldn't think that there'd be so many colors there, but that's very hard to do if we were going to do that topically. I shouldn't say it's very hard. It'll take a long time doing that opaquely with thick paint and whatnot to get that look and flavor. Now we got this main section that we've got a lot of different variations of the the browns, earth browns, and your primitive reds and tamarack browns. Look how they bleed in one another, leaving some of that base to kind of show through. So that's nothing more than putting it on, ragging it off. Would you do the whole job that way as far as you had a big massive grotto? No, there's other techniques that we're going to be covering as we move through this, and as the YouTube channel matures and get enough content, I hope to be doing this through demonstration. All right. Next illustration. Okay, guys. So in this example, it looks like we got some, looks like some flagstone of some sort, kind of more on the grade subdued tonal range. But if you look at this one to the left, look how complex that is. There's browns, there's some graphites in there. Obviously, you got the blotchy lichen. It's adding a little bit of variance there. But if you look at this section, generally a lot of browns, some golds, like 4 different flavors of browns. Now, you wouldn't mix 4 different browns. You would use a diluted ratio brown on that surface to get that to pop. And the product needs to be right. It needs to be thinned out just right. If it's thin too much, it won't stay on the surface. It'll wash off with a few rain sessions, or worse yet, come freeze and thaw season, you're going to get a phone call from your client. So one to be cognizant of. Surface porosity plays a big factor in that process as well. All right. Next example, cabinetry. This is what they call a glaze. Let's just say that's hickory or maple, one of the two. And if you look at that, they ended up with the kind of a lighter tone of wood as the base. Let that dry, and then they come in with like a mocha, as they call it, or an espresso. And it's just more of a dark oil rubbed kind of finish that the glaze, and they're using in this case, stays into the recessed areas of the trim details. So if you look at some of these molding details where the 45s meet, as well as the insert panel, and obviously the crown molding and some of the other little carpentry features. But be very almost impossible to get that effect painting that opaquely or staining that. Well, wouldn't be a stain at that point, it'd be a paint. So one little example in another trade that shows you the ability of using transparent glazes properly. All right. Next example. The stack stone. This caught my eye. Is this section right in here? Lots of washes in there. It's kind of a not a high resolution photo, so I can't zoom in too high, but that's a lot of washes in there and a lot of complex. You would spend a little more time in there ragging on color, ragging it off, different variations of water dilutions for your stains or colors. Okay, guys, in this example, here's a piece of marble. Look at the variations of gray running through that piece. On this side, and I'm going to create a new layer so I can write on this. I'm going to use a red marker here. So look at this area right here. I'll grab the keyboard here, lower this brush size. So if you look at that gray versus what's running in the core here, quite different. You guys can see that? Matter of fact, I'm going to pluck those, meaning I'm going to take that color, apply it right there. So that's this color right here. Okay, now I'm going to pluck this core color and put it next to this one. Look how darker that is in value tone. Right? So this was the first one, and this was the second one. So, pretty cool. Now you could do that with that one gray. If you dilute it right, get the right mixture and the porosity is correct, you're going to get some of those variations to show up automatically without artistically putting a lot of those bandings in and I guess bleed out areas where colors are melding together. Again, that base tone needs to be dry before you go ahead and glaze or do any type of special effects. All right, let me delete that layer. I'm going to buzz through the next one. Here's another granite example. You know, same thing, salt and pepper granite. And then that looks nothing more than like a Simpsonite yellow, which is a really potent yellow. And lightly speckled on there, and use enough water, it'll bleed into that surface. Again, very, very hard to do opaquely. Okay guys, this example, we got some browns. Thought this was a pretty cool piece to show. Look at the top. Lots of variations going on there. Okay, that's where that complexity comes in, where colors are overlapping one another, creating very, very complex color arrangements. Same thing with the face, with the browns. You know, you can start with like a light, I'd say orangey / real subdued brown, probably in a value range of like 3 out of 10. 3 being 30% gray in that value range. And then putting some earth browns and some canyon browns on top of one another after that base coat is dry is going to give you some real interesting effects. Okay. Now check this out. Here's an apple. Again, a whole different species of example, but nevertheless, the principle is still the same, right? We have an apple on the left, which is unoxidized. On the right, it's been oxidized. Just like minerals become oxidized in the geology. But look at the different tones of brown on top of that base coat of the apple, which is more like a buttery, you know, cream, if you will, minus the inside core of the canary yellow. So look at the browns. So you can base coat in that cream, and then go ahead and then throw your earth browns and canyon browns and tamarack browns on top of that and get some nice subtle variations of color washes there. Okay. Okay guys, so just like the apple example, look at this example of the watercolor swashes. These are two colors, the blue and the red, or cyan and magenta. They diluted it down with different ratios to water to pigment in this sense. Look at the variations there. As the red overlaps the blue, you can see, you know, different purples shining through, right? And that's the power of the glazing process right there. As that base color underneath it is opaque or semi-opaque, transparent in this case, but the color on top is glazed through, which means it allows light to pass through it and reflect back and create that optical sensation within your eye, you know, basically, which sends the signal to the brain. Okay. All right. Another example. Let's see here. We talked about cabinet glazing, stone bench, right? And then, okay, check this example out. Pretty, really light tone gray. Okay, as far as the bench up top. Let me see if I can draw on this. That's a gray color. Pick a red. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Okay. All right. So if you look here, pretty light colored. Same thing here. Now check out the fade going on over here. Right? Pretty, you know, I see a Simpsonite yellow and obviously some brown, whether an earth brown or a canyon brown, and look at the fade. You know, this could be done in washes, you know, soaking in different porosity levels of texture there. All right, just another example, guys. Okay. Talked about the apple. They got the browns, the granite. All right, guys, so check this example out. Salt and pepper granite, and it's got some canyon brown. Looks like washes over the top of it. I'm zooming in kind of tight. I don't care if the camera gets fuzzy or not, but you gotta, if you look close, there's different variations or values of browning in there. That's because the brown is translucent in some areas and in some areas more opaque. And geology-wise, obviously, just like the apple, that's just a natural process of oxidization. Okay, and very simple to get if your colors are diluted down properly. Okay, and like I said, as this YouTube channel matures, the information has become more available. We do cover all of this in our classes, so if you have an opportunity to attend a live workshop, like a 2-day on-ramp workshop, I highly recommend it. Okay, guys, in the next section, I'm going to go ahead and be sharing some live, quick little demonstrations to help illustrate this a step further. Let me cut to it. Okay, guys, so in this example, you'll notice I'll start laying down some Simpsonite yellow and white. This is really super thick watercolor paper. And I like it because it absorbs the stain just as concrete would, and it doesn't leak through or warp the paper. All right, so you can see I am brushing this on in a directional motion. Wood grain has a motion to it, just like rock does, and I always kind of keep that in mind. And why that's important is because as the color dries on there, as the colors dry, you're going to get different forms of pigmentation in different areas. So inherently, by going back and forth like that, you're going to get some cool variations. Now you notice I'm dropping in some white onto the surface. That yellow, Simpsonite yellow, and that mixture is still kind of wet. So I'm able to kind of dapple and dopple on some white in there. Again, keeping in mind that diluted. All right, so in this clip, you can see some of the white kind of dried in the core. I like that. It gives me a little bit of like paleness to the color. You see I'm zooming in. I think the lighting is a little harsh there, but I think you can get the gist. All right. Now, I'm going in with the tamarack brown. And what I'm doing is, you'll notice, I'm just letting the pigment kind of, or the colors kind of puddle up and settle. And then you'll notice I'll use a rag and then I'll wipe off what I don't want. Now, even though I'm wiping off what I don't want, you'll notice as this video continues on, it's going to leave little bleeds, and again, I know I'm overusing the word variations, but I think that's really the best way to describe it. So, all right, I'm gonna let this play through. Enjoy, and I'll be back in a second. Okay, so if you guys have been noticing, I've been kind of wiping down the excess. Believe it or not, it still leaves quite a bit of detail left behind that kind of leaches into that undertone, or I should say on top of that undertone, creating the glaze. And you gotta let these colors dry out. You know, when they go on, they look a little intense, but they fade out, or I should say subdue out rather nicely as compared to when they go on. Okay, all right, so in this example, I'm just tightening up a little bit now. So now I'm taking Canyon Brown and Earth Brown, mixed at 50-50, and I think the water content was about 3-to-1. 3 parts water, 1 part colors. And you notice I'm just kind of putting these little knots in, or, you know, if you want to call them knots, or scars, or things that happen in wood, basically. And again, look how dark those are, and you'll notice I'm going to blot them out. As so. I'm going to fade down a little bit, and I want a little punch. I'm using the zones of the different value ranges to make this look like a realistic piece of wood, or contain realistic colors within that wood. And you notice it's drying right before your eyes. A lot of those blots and bleeds are really starting to pay dividends right now. All right, well, we'll let this play through, and I'll tag back in a second. Okay, so this was a quick demo I sent to actually a friend of mine, and in this example, I'm using a older brush. It's still soft enough. The chip brush is still soft enough, but it had some. It actually had some areas that was pretty stiff, almost like dried paint that dried on it, and the bristles are no longer absorption. Well, the cool thing about it is for like wood grain and agates, in this case, like this geode agate type of special effects. You can see as I drag that through that, it's dragging those colors through that. And just inherently, you get some cool, nice tonal shifts between different tones of gray. See how I zoom in on that? And as those dry, even though they're subtle, that's huge in the base tone. So that base coat, typically, you would have to work hard to mix different flavors of gray or different shades of gray to get those complex shifts. Remember early when the video started, we looked at some of those watercolor examples? When you tone over this with some other different colors, transparently, you're going to get a really cool, complex look. All right, guys, more to come, and stay tuned.